that it's not embarrassing to like stuff.
Yes.
It's not, it doesn't make you pathetic. It doesn't make you a snowflake to care. It doesn't make you a fool for really enjoying and liking stuff. In fact, it makes you very brave. It makes you very interesting. It makes you very well-rounded. And it makes you, just a really great person.
Hey there. Welcome or welcome back to the Mischief Movement podcast. I'm Zoe, your guide on this journey to shake up the status quo and design a life that truly makes you feel alive. If you've ever felt disconnected, stuck on autopilot, or trapped in a life that feels more like a treadmill than an adventure, you're in the right place. I know that change can feel scary, so let's turn down the fear and crank up the fierce as we transform your life from the inside out. Whether it's solo episodes packed with actionable advice or interviews with some absolute badass human beings who've dared to defy the norm by living life their way, we're here to inspire, activate, empower, and challenge you each week. My mission is simple: to help you reawaken your rebel spirit, break free from mediocrity, and design a life that's anything but dull. You only get one wild life, so what are you planning to do with yours? If you're ready to stop settling, start living boldly, and create a positive impact along the way, let's dive in and stir up some mischief together. Now buckle up and let's go. Hey Rebels, welcome back to another episode of the Mischief Movement podcast, where we shake up the ordinary and design a life on our terms. Today I'm joined by the incredible Ellie Kime, writer, copywriter, and founder of the Enthusiast Co. Ellie is all about bringing more joy, passion, and pure enthusiasm into everything she touches, from words on a page to the way we live life. In this chat, we dive deep into the power of being unapologetically enthusiastic, how to channel that energy into your creative pursuits, and why embracing your inner geek is the key to freedom.
Okay. Well, I'm super excited to speak to you this week, Ellie. Ellie Kime, isn't it? Is it Kime?
It is. Yeah, well done. 10 points to you.
Perfect. From the Enthusiast Co. Now, I love that name, but tell me and tell everybody listening, what is your mischief?
What is my mischief? My mischief is loving things unapologetically with my whole heart in a world that very often discourages us from doing that. I think that's my mischief.
Yes, absolutely. I had an introduction to what you do via an email, and even your emails just ooze enthusiasm. So where has this sense of enthusiasm come from, and how are you using it? What are you doing with it?
I mean, what am I doing? It's a good question I ask myself every day. Where has it come from? That's a very good question. I do think it's not something I intentionally cultivated. I do think I am just naturally predisposed to being overly enthusiastic. And I kind of first realised that wasn't entirely not normal necessarily, but everybody's experience, at least, when I set up a wedding planning business when I was still in uni. And everyone said, oh, yeah, and everyone was like, don't you think it's a bit weird that you're so obsessed with weddings at 21? And a lot of people said, do you think it's because your parents are divorced? And I was like, well, yes, possibly. But a lot of people thought it was really bizarre that I was so obsessed with weddings. And I couldn't work out why. I thought it was bizarre that people thought it was bizarre, because I just really liked them. And I, had kind of dove headfirst into doing it. And then that made me realise that my enthusiasm for weddings was something that was quite unusual, just in terms of how deeply I'd thrown myself in. And so I just thought about it. It's been a really driving factor in my life that I've never really put words to, and so I started to look into that a bit more. And then a year later, I set up The Enthusiast, which is a platform to encourage people to be more enthusiastic, because I think it's a word that gets used a lot in terms of like buzzwords on CVs and things that we all say we want people to be, but in actual real practical life we discourage it a lot of the time. So that's kind of my enthusiasm journey, if you will. But I don't know where it came from. I think my parents are both quite enthusiastic about their own special things. So I definitely grew up in an environment where it was encouraged.
Yeah, I love that so much. I do think that if you've got some enthusiasm, it's a real superpower, something that needs to be tapped into and made the most of, like really taken advantage of. I think you've done some talks on this as well, haven't you?
Yeah. Oh, I'll talk to anybody about it that'll listen. But yeah, I think it's I think we really underestimate the power of it, and it's something I'm very cautious of saying with no caveats, because obviously I think a lot of people subscribe to the idea of like, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life, and lots of these things which I don't think are necessarily true. Like, enthusiasm won't get you everywhere, especially in the world today, based on your various privileges and whatnot. But it is a very good, for me, enthusiasm is what it's all about. Like, there's no point if there's no enthusiasm generally. It's what kind of makes the world worth living in, I think, which is quite a grandiose statement, but it is one I stand, every time I say it, I like check in. I'm like, do I still believe that? Yeah, I still believe that.
Yeah. I mean, I love the statement that you wrote, which was about creating a movement, encouraging people to be more enthusiastic and be unapologetically themselves. So obviously, with that alone, you'd conquered me already. I was like, oh my God, I love this. Like, how do you encourage people then to sort of harness that power of being enthusiastic and use it to improve their lives?
For me, it's about not setting an example. Like, I'm not stood there going, this is the way, guys, just be more like me. But I think it's about calling out how insidious the kind of anti-enthusiasm vibes of our society are. For example, stuff like calling somebody really basic. I used to do that. And then a few years ago, I was like, well, I'm just calling somebody out for liking what they like. It's like, that's not a bad thing if you just like things that aren't super highbrow. And so, for me, it's a lot of things about reminding people that they are allowed to enjoy things, that childish pleasures are really enjoyable, that in the world at large, again, which is so rubbish in so many ways at the moment, that actually enthusiasm is not just a good thing, but a necessary thing. I really like to remind people of that. When I set the enthusiast up, I kind of thought, this is so, now that I've seen it, it's so obvious somebody else must be doing it. And when there weren't other people doing it, I was like, interesting. I think the things I do are pretty obvious, but they are obvious in the hiding in plain sight, I think.
That's such a good way of putting it. That's sometimes how I feel about running around this concept of mischief as well. Like, everybody should tap into that side of them that's a little bit rebellious, because they're kind of leading with curiosity and questioning things, not just, being a sheep. And so I'm always kind of trying to encourage that sense of, well, how about we think about this slightly differently? Which to me seems completely obvious, but isn't always fully acknowledged. It's almost like you're the black sheep in the room because you're pointing out something that's nobody else wants to look at.
And I do think kind of the way you approach mischief and the way I approach enthusiasm, they're very aligned in that mischief. I think a lot of the discourse will be about how you want people to kind of think outside the box and to step out of line and to be creative. But actually, in real life, the moment people are slightly mischievous, we're like, no, that's disgusting. How could they do that? Blah, blah, blah. So the way we speak about it as a society at large and the way that we deal with it are very different things. So I think it's very aligned in that way. And I love your focus on mischief, because there is just even the word mischief makes me want to smile. Like, it really does just bring me a little just impish joy. I love it.
I love that, impish joy. So since you've then kind of identified this passion and this superpower that you have for being enthusiastic about things, how has that then either sort of improved your life or changed it in some way?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it has helped me, and this is such a cliche, but sometimes cliches are cliches for a reason.
Yes, sir.
It really has helped me love life more. And as soon as I kind of allowed myself to wholeheartedly embrace what I loved, it really helped me come to terms with who I am, because fundamentally, I could take all the personality tests, I could do all the jobs. Fundamentally, what I am at heart is an obsessive and a fangirl. That is just how I approach most things in life. So it's really helped me understand more about myself and how I walk through the world. But it's also helped me walk through the world with a bit more ease and a bit more lightness and a bit more joy, I suppose. Because the more I kind of looked at it academically, the more I realised that it wasn't the same thing as toxic positivity, and it also isn't a bad thing. I think I was really worried that it was frivolous when I first realised that that's kind of what my entire life was based around. I was like, oh my God, enthusiasm, that's so like, there's serious things going on in the world. But actually, it's a huge part of... Yeah, it's a huge part of activism. It's a huge part of allyship, and I think it's a huge part of how to be human. So it's really helped me kind of not necessarily make peace with the world at large, but come to terms with it and do as much as I can to make the most of my time here.
Yeah, I love that. So I know that there are people who are going to be listening saying, "That's great, you're enthusiastic about stuff. I'm enthusiastic about stuff, but." There's always people who sort of go, yeah, that's great for you, it's not going to work for me. Or, yeah, I love the idea, but how do I actually put that into practice? So what do you normally say when you come up against that kind of resistance of people being like, yeah, great, but yeah, not sure?
Good question. And I think, it's about asking people why they feel it's not something they can't do. It's because so much of it, and again, this is such a cliche, like, do you remember when you say somebody said something mean about you at school, and your mum would always say, it doesn't say anything about you, it says more about them, and you'd be like, yeah, okay, that doesn't help because I'm still being bullied. Like, that's like, what am I supposed to do with that information, mum? Thanks. And this is a bit of that, but I do think that so often when we judge other people for being enthusiastic, it actually is because we are jealous of them and wish that we had the bravery to be doing what they're doing. So when I do have uncharacteristic compassion, I would say, for people who are like, I don't know how to integrate it into my life or I don't think it's going to work, because I think they're coming from a place of fear, which is, entirely reasonable, but things don't change if people don't change. So I just, try and encourage them to, it doesn't have to be seismic. Like, you don't have to, wear a suit to work one day and then the next day go in with a full Star Wars tattoo sleeve. Like, it doesn't have to be that way, but it can just be getting more comfortable in who you are as a person and letting some of that enthusiasm shine in settings where you usually hide it, so that you can go into places feeling more complete and more whole. And not worry. And again, this is something that I say, and it's like a huge piece, so I'm not saying it flippantly, but just caring less about what other people think. And that I'm saying that as somebody who has definitely not conquered that and who still goes through that every day. But that is such a huge part of it as well, is realizing that as long as you're doing what you're not hurting anybody, what's the problem with it?
100%. And so what kind of things do you get enthusiastic about?
Well, I mean, the most bizarre things, like, I am One Direction and High School Musical obsessed. Like, I was that girl at school.
You did say you're a fangirl.
Yeah, and I really truly am. Like, I went back to uni a couple of years ago to do a master's, and I got to write my dissertation on One Direction, and I was just having the absolute time of my life. Everyone in my course was doing such serious things. Like, so I did a master's in sociocultural linguistics. So that's about how language changes between cultures and races and society. And it's fascinating because I love languages. That's something else I'm very enthusiastic about. Although I'm highly unskilled in it, but you don't have to be good at it to be enthusiastic about it. No. And all of my classmates were doing like, a takedown of refugee bills that had been discussed in the Hansard in Parliament and stuff. And I was like, I'm going to write about One Direction fans. I loved it. Postcodes. I really love postcodes. Don't know why. Absolutely love them. Just think they're so much fun. We went to the Royal Mail Museum a few years ago and I have never been happier in my life. My partner of 10 years was like, yeah, I loved it. It was so
Tell
good.
me about it.
Well, what really got me was they used to send letters and the recipient would have to pay postage. And so what they would do is they would read it and then send it back with the postman and be like, oh no, I never asked for this. And so they would like still get the message. They also used to pay per letter, side of the page. So people would write like normally like vertically, and then they'd write horizontally. And and they had examples in the museum, and it was like the biggest jumble of scribblings you could ever see.
Wow.
They've got a mail rail, which is like this old postal train that used to take the post underground between somewhere in Paddington. But you can go in one of the little cabs and go through the old postal, which I wouldn't advise if you're above 6 foot. My partner is 6'4" and he was cramped. But if you are the size of a letter or a large package like me, loved it. What else am I enthusiastic about? I'm really, in quite a meta way, I'm very enthusiastic about enthusiasm. Like, I love nothing more than people telling me what they're enthusiastic about, and like getting into deep conversations with them and just asking more questions about why. Because I really do, even if I have no kind of understanding of the topic, I love finding out about why people are so enthusiastic about those things. So I guess that's kind of humanity, if that doesn't sound too grandiose. I'm just enthusiastic about humanity, but I really love knowing what makes people tick and why they gravitate
interesting, isn't it,
what
when you
love.
can ask somebody the why behind that. You know, I'm always banging on about people leaning into the things they love, but not in a kind of dreamy, oh, you know, you'll never work a day in your life kind of way, but in a kind of, when you pursue the things that really make you feel alive, all kinds of things happen as if by magic. It doesn't mean that that thing is then going to become your career and it's going to define who you are. It might just be another way of expressing yourself that then leads to something else that then sparks a different conversation and blah, blah, blah. If you're willing to open that first door, you just don't know where it's going to go. And that's what kind of gets me excited about following that trail of, well, this really excites me, I'm going to do that, without any kind of agenda about it has to lead to a career or an eventual job opportunity or something. So I'm the same in a way. I get really excited about helping somebody find that excitement and then go, right, go for it. It doesn't matter what happens, just follow it.
Yeah, it is. There's nothing I love more than seeing somebody like talk about what they love. It really is one of my greatest joys in life, especially if it's something they don't get to talk about very often. You know, so often I ask people and they're like, oh, you don't want to hear about it. I'm like, you have no idea how much I want to hear about it, actually. Like, tell me all. And I love what you're saying about kind of leaning into what people love as well, because, and I think I'm really glad and grateful that you said that it doesn't have to turn into a career, because I think that's another kind of fallacy that I fell into right at the start of The Enthusiast, was believing that if you liked something you had to make money off it, or the goal was to make money off it, when actually I think there are a lot of people out there who would rather have a job that gave them money, security, stability, and wasn't tied to what they love doing. And I think that's totally okay as well. And I think we don't talk about, well, you and I do obviously, but we don't talk about that enough culturally. That, you know, the vibe is very much if you've got a skill, monetize. If you've got a hobby, monetize it. Where it's like, well, actually, maybe I just want to sew and don't want to have to sell dresses. Crazy idea.
Yeah, one of the things I love about like the people I talk to on here is that it's not an entrepreneurship podcast, and so it's not about how do you take your passion and turn it and monetize it and turn it into your career. It's I speak to people where the things that we talk about quite often are projects on the side, or just interests that they have. Sometimes it's their actual job. Sometimes they would like it to become their job. But I suppose the other thing is a lot of the people I talk to are those kind of multi-hyphenate, multifaceted, multi-passionate, all the multi-words, people who are really interested in lots of things. And that's another thing that I'm really excited about, because for too long in my own sort of like working career, I felt like I should be a certain way. Back in the days when I was designing shoes, I didn't feel like I was such a good designer because I had a lot of other interests as well. And so to meet somebody like you who can be enthusiastic about a million different gives me permission to be the same and be like, no, I'm just going to embrace all of these things. I mean, for a few years now, I have been saying quite unapologetically, I am this, I am that, I am also this, I love doing that. Like, I don't want to be that sort of one label anymore. And I'm very passionate about helping other people break out of that little box as well, and sort of see how you can be, I don't know, you can be a mechanic and you can be a designer. You can be a tap dancer at the weekends and you can be a business manager during the weekdays. You know, it doesn't matter. I think it leads to a far more enriched life when we just open ourselves up to all of those things. I think that's also what you were saying, isn't it?
Yeah, but I completely agree. And I really, so I have another business where I'm a copywriter, and my kind of main bag is helping small business owners explain who they are and what they do and why they're so good at it. And a huge part of that is, encouraging people to show up authentically as their whole selves, as much as, with boundaries still in place, of course. But part of that is people saying, oh, well, I actually do this, but people don't want to know about that. And it's like, yeah, they do. Your about page is, I love reading people's about pages and finding out random stuff about them. Like, it's very much, it presents you as a whole, and it makes you feel whole as well. So I completely agree. I also think it speaks volumes to your creative brain that you went to tap dancing. I love that. Would never have come up with tap dancing.
Used to do tap dancing. Well,
okay.
many.
See, interesting. Want to know more about that? But even then, I would love to just chat to you for 8 hours about your previous lives, because when you said about being a shoe designer, like, one of my mum's main enthusiasms is shoe design. Like, she just really wants to make her own shoes. She laments the state of shoes in this country nowadays. She loves to chat about it. Yeah, and so I've got so many questions. It's just everything I have more questions about, and I feel like sometimes people are like, really? Like, you want me to follow up on this? Or are you just being polite? And I'm like, no, tell me everything. Like, just no
Maybe
details.
Society just isn't ready for our levels of curiosity. It
has been said before.
Oh, I love that so much. Where do you think you're going to take the Enthusiast in the future?
So it has undergone a bit of a shift recently. So I did have a shop until the back end of last year, because I was quite ill last year and I just didn't have the time to be promoting it and do the products justice as much as I wanted to. But I currently, the manifestations it has currently is an Instagram and a Substack. And so what I really want to do is keep up my frequency with posting on Substack and kind of treat it as, I think, sometimes I get caught in the idea, because of my other work as a copywriter, I think I always have to think it has to be like tips and tools and it has to be helpful. And actually, I think sometimes there's joy in just writing about what I'm enthusiastic about, and hopefully that comes across. So writing more. Thank you. And also more speaking opportunities. I'm doing a conference next week and I'm making the slides for it. I was making the slides for it this morning and I'm so excited about it. It's really reminded me, because again, I was ill for so much of last year. I couldn't do any in-person stuff. I'm so excited to do some presentations again and just talk to people about what they love. It really is my favourite thing.
What are you going to be talking about?
Well, the official title is The Ultimate Fangirl, A Cheerleader's Guide to Enjoying Everything. And I've got 3 slides so far, and they're all One Direction related. So it really is playing into my strengths.
I was going to say, playing to your strengths. Amazing.
Yeah, you've got to lean into it, haven't you, really? Yes, but it's like a 7-minute talk, so it's just going to be really quick. Pep talk, basically, on how people should be more themselves. I'm really excited about it.
Sounds incredible. How are you on the old speaking side of things? Are you a bit of a seasoned pro at talking about these kind of things, or do you still get nervous even when you're talking about something that you love?
Oh, see, I know this is the 3rd time in a row I've said great question, but great question, because I think a lot of the time we mistake enthusiasm, or we mistake extroversion for enthusiasm, and we also mistake confidence for enthusiasm as well. Or we mistake enthusiasm for confidence. Like, I am extremely enthusiastic, but I get so nervous before these things. Like, I'm not confident in myself at all. I really have had to train myself as a self-employed person to show up online more and be more visible, and that definitely the weird thing is, I know logically that I'm fine when I'm on stage. Like, I'm a pretty good conversationalist. I've got a hell of a loud voice. Like, I can project. It's fine. And I love doing it, but in the run-up I still go like, oh my god, like, what if I fail? What if I can't speak? What if I'm not funny? Like, it really, I used to be, I don't know whether this is a universal thing, but we used to do young enterprise at school. So you basically make a mini business in 6th form, and you get through to, the further you go, you kind of do more and more presentations. And I used to be physically sick before the presentations, not as in make myself sick, but I was just so nervous that I was physically sick. And so when I started my own business, my parents, and I was like, popping up at work, doing workshops and stuff, my parents were like, are you sure about, is that a good idea? So I'm getting better, but yeah, definitely not a... I like to think you'd think I was a seasoned pro when you saw me on stage, but behind the scenes, very stressed out.
No, this is good to know. I had a conversation recently about how just because you're an extrovert doesn't necessarily mean that you're super confident. So it's interesting to hear that perspective. Ellie, where can people find out more about what you do, both in terms of the Enthusiast and about your incredible work as a copywriter?
So you can find me on Substack, which is where we originally connected, theenthusiastco.substack.com, or you can search Pep Talk or Ellie Kime. Hopefully it'll come up. It's not a very common name, so most people aren't fighting for that kind of leverage. Or on Instagram, I'm at The Enthusiast and Co. And then my copywriting stuff can be found under Eleanor Molly. So that's eleanormolly.co.uk. But there's a link to it in my Instagram bio as well.
I will link to those in the show notes.
And tell me what you're enthusiastic about.
Amazing. And just before we pop off, what one thing do you think you'd like people to take away from our conversation today? Whether that's about, enthusiasm, or whether it's about leaning into the quirky things you love, whether it's about going to visit the Royal Mail Museum or...
Yeah, if you're listening, first of all, that you ask great questions. That's what I want people to take away. I think that's the thing I've said the most, is great question. What would I like people to take away? I would like people the fact that it's not embarrassing to like stuff.
Yes.
It's not... it doesn't make you pathetic. It doesn't make you a snowflake to care. It doesn't make you a fool for really enjoying and liking stuff. In fact, it makes you very brave. It makes you very interesting. It makes you very well-rounded. And it makes you, just a really great person, I think, a really person. So don't be ashamed. Don't be embarrassed, and be yourself. Just a small tidbit to take away. Just be yourself. It's that easy, guys.
Totally. No, I love that. Thank you so much for this conversation. I've loved it.
Thank you. I've loved it too. It's been so much fun.
So here are my takeaways from this incredible episode with Ellie Kime. Number 1, remember you are allowed to enjoy things, and childish pleasures should be celebrated, not discouraged. 2, when you wholeheartedly embrace and accept those things you love, it can help you understand who you are as a person. 3, have you ever judged or ridiculed someone about their passion and enthusiasm for something? Maybe you could reflect on this and ask yourself if there's an element of jealousy about what they're doing, because it takes courage to step forward and follow that passion. Number 4, things don't change if people don't change. So if you want life to look different, you have to start thinking and behaving differently. 5, if you can express more of your enthusiasms in settings where you'd normally hide it, you'll allow yourself to show up in a way where you feel more whole as a person. Number 6, you don't have to be good at something to be enthusiastic about it. Number 7, your passions don't have to make money, and it's perfectly okay to have a job that brings you stability and an income without being related to your passions. You can decide to dedicate your free time to the things you enjoy just as much as you can also decide to create a career around them. The choice is yours, and there is no wrong way to design your life. It's about making it work for you. And finally, number 8, at the end of the day, getting excited about things means you are interesting, brave, and probably a well-rounded human being. So stop apologizing for your enthusiasm and embrace it. That's a wrap on another episode of the Mischief Movement podcast. If today's content stirred something in you, let's keep in touch on Instagram or connect with me on LinkedIn. You can even click the link in the show notes to sign up to my Mischief Mail newsletter, where you'll get exclusive insights on upcoming episodes and your chance to submit questions to future guests. But shh, don't tell anyone, it's our secret. For more info on ways to work with me and some fun free resources, check out the website themischiefmovement.com. Until next time, stay bold, stay rebellious, and of course, keep making mischief.